Okay, so I am going to teach you about your kid's tongue, your tongue, everyone's tongue, where it's supposed to be, and why it's a problem if it's not where it's supposed to be. So here is a little mouth guy. No one's mouth really looks like this exactly, but you can see that this is the bottom underneath your tongue. This is the top, which has bumpy ridges, right? Okay, so I want you to just close your mouth. Figure out where in your mouth your tongue is. Where is it? Now, you might be like, I don't know. I ask kids this, and a lot of times they say, I'm not sure. So I say, okay, is it on the top? Like, is it touching your palate up here, the roof of your mouth? Is it in the middle? Like, is it just kind of hanging out in the middle of your mouth with your mouth closed? Or is it on the bottom of the mouth? Okay. My second question is it touching the teeth? Either one, either the top or the bottom teeth. Is it touching teeth? Or is it behind the teeth, like further back, not touching anything? Okay, so once you can establish where the tongue is, I'll tell you where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be up here on the palate, right, like kind of like where like the bumpy ridges meets the rest of your palate. So like right here, you see how it's not touching the teeth? It's not forward like that. It's back behind here. Okay, so that's where your tongue is supposed to be when you're not speaking or eating. So if the tongue is down here on the bottom, where I'd say most of our kids' tongues are, that's a problem. Well, why? Because when you are an infant, your tongue is supposed to be at the top, right? So your tongue acts as a palate expander. It's essentially a palate expander. Like, you know, those metal things that people put in their mouths. But your tongue does it naturally when it's in the right spot. So your tongue should basically form your palate, and it should be kind of flat like this mouth. Now, what is directly above your palate, right? I'll do my little, skull. So right directly above the palate here, this is the roof of the mouth here, is the nasal cavity. That's the separation, is your palate. This right here, this palate. So if this way, if the tongue is low, when you're a baby, instead of the palate flattening out like it's supposed to, it will become high and narrow. And guess where it goes? Into the nasal cavity, because there's nowhere else for it to go. So my tongue did not do this. And actually, it created a deviated septum. So this nostril is actually very, very narrow. And this one is narrow, but not as bad as this one. But you could imagine that causes issues, especially as you get older. And actually, you can see the changes in my face as I get older, with like from an infant, and then like about the age where my septum deviated because my palate vaulted and there was nowhere for that bone in the middle to go. So it kind of got pushed over. Now, I don't look like I have a broken nose or anything, but it's not equal. The nostrils are not equal. So, yeah, so that can cause like breathing issues, sleep issues, etc. But your tongue is not supposed to be down here. Again, it's supposed to be up here. It's not just about your palate being high and it going into your nose. It's also about the pressure in your mouth. So when your tongue is in the right spot, all of the pressures kind of are where they're supposed to be. So when the pressures are all where they're supposed to be, the teeth come in all nice and straight and aligned. There shouldn't be crowding or spacing. You know, that's like a big piece of it, really, is that your teeth can get all crowded and kind of misformed. It actually changes the shape of your whole mouth. And as you can see, all of the bones are connected. So it actually changes the shape of your face as well. So a lot of people whose tongue is not in the right position have a longer face, not as round like mine. Mine's a little bit of a longer face, but there's actually people who have very long faces. And it is because of their tongue. And you might not have known that. So, you know, mostly I find that the tongue is mostly tethered. See how there's like this like frenulum here, this little stringy kind of thing. See how far back, and this isn't like anatomically correct, but you can see that it's farther back. A lot of our kids with ties, we see that much further forward. Now, in some very severe cases, it's right at the tongue tip. It doesn't insert back here into the middle. It inserts like very, very close to the tip of the tongue. But a lot of times a posterior tongue tie means that it's just a little bit further back than that. It's not anterior in the front, it's posterior in the back. So this one is really like where it's supposed to be, further down on the tongue. And, you know, it should be a little bit, in most mouths, it should look like this. But a lot of our kids, especially our picky eaters, tend to have this issue. I'm going to make a different video about why I think that this keeps occurring, but I just wanted to share about this important tongue issue. And one more thing really quick about the tongue. So your tongue has 8 muscles. It's not one big muscle. There's actually 8 different muscles that make up the tongue. And you actually have to contract and extend different muscles to do things like move food left and right. So you actually have to move like 4 different muscles to do that movement. You have to like retract this one, extend this one. It's a whole coordinated event. So our kids that have ties where their tongue is low in the mouth, their tongue is not up here, which means that they're not swallowing correctly. Their most common compensatory strategy is a tongue thrust, which means that the tongue will come forward and up like this, often pushing against the teeth to swallow food. So imagine there's food on the middle of the tongue here. And instead of what you're supposed to do, where the tongue tip comes up, it suctions back, swallow. That should be it. Otherwise, what happens is in this tongue thrusting motion is the tongue comes up and forward and it pushes the food back. You see how doing that could kind of push the food to the back of the mouth? Okay, so that's what it does. It pushes the food to the back. And when that happens, that motion can affect your teeth. It could make you have an open bite. It could also cause a lot of food to be left over on the tongue. So what I find is that our picky eaters, their tongues have a lot of food left over. And why? Because they're not gathering the food in the middle of their tongue like they're supposed to. Because these muscles on the side that help kind of cup the food and bring it into the middle are weak. So a lot of times we work on these lateral tongue muscles to help build that strength and get a good bolus formed, or, you know, that's what we call like the little blob of food that's in your mouth before you swallow it. So that you learn how to do a proper swallow that you're supposed to be doing. It corrects not only the pressures in your mouth, but it also corrects the tongue thrusting and it corrects that there hopefully is no longer food all over the place. And when there isn't food all over the place, we feel a lot safer because we don't have that subconscious fear of, I might like choke. There's still like something like left over lingering in my mouth. Hopefully that all made sense. Any questions, please put them below in the comments and I will answer them. Okay, thanks.